Ilan kayo dito? 21. Okay, so we're going to start with our lesson, communication and globalization. So, with the shrinking world brought by advancements in communications technology, people can now engage in communication situations beyond borders in real time. I have been telling this to you and have been saying this and have been discussing this in our past sessions that communication has made the world smaller, right? Communication and technology, specifically communications technology, has made the world smaller. What do you mean by this? The world has become smaller because people are now connected. So we can now connect to every part of the world, to almost every part of the world, without going without going physically to these areas. Before, in the ancient times, or even in the colonial times or the pre-colonial times, people have to navigate. People had to travel, they had to ride a ship, they had to have a navigation, they had to had they had to have uh, a group of ships in order to be able to arrive or uh, to find new areas or new continents or new regions. But now we don't have to do that. We can learn, we can know, we can have information on the different areas of the globe, on their culture, on their economic status, on their economic mechanisms, and any other mechanisms of that particular society without going there. We just have to open our computers, open our cell phones, connect ourselves on the internet, and then we will be connected to them already. So the world has shrunk. Okay, I mean the world has shrunk already, and there are almost no borders. Okay, so the borders now are almost removed because of this, because we are now connected to each other. We can now talk to them even though we don't have to go there and we don't have to write letters. We can be connected in real time. So the borders are already removed. So this phenomenon is strengthened by what we call globalization. And how do we define globalization? So globalization is the process of interaction, integration between people, companies, and governments worldwide. So we know from the word itself, we're talking about globe. So when we say globe, that is the model of the earth. So we use the word globe to refer to the world. So when we say globalization, in this phenomenon or in this situation, the people from different countries, from different companies, from different countries, from different continents are being able to are able to interact and are able to integrate with each other, and that's what we call globalization. So they can connect with the different countries in the world. Okay, so that is globalization. So primarily, globalization is an economic process. So it's primarily an economic process. But of course, in the process of economy, in the concept of economy, we cannot leave out and we cannot neglect social and then cultural aspects. When there is economic mechanism, when there are economic mechanisms, when there are economic processes, we cannot leave out or we cannot remove social and cultural aspects from it. It cannot be separated. That's why globalization has also been associated with social and cultural aspects. Okay, so that's our focus. Our focus is on social and cultural aspects of globalization, because if you're going to look if the focus of purposive communication is on social and cultural aspects and in the communicative aspects of globalization, in your contemporary world, if you're having contemporary world subject, the focus there is on economic process of globalization. That's the difference. So your subject, the contemporary world, will focus on the economic process of globalization, while purposive communication focuses on social and the cultural aspects of globalization. And that's what we are focusing now. So globalization has affected us in numerous ways, especially with how we communicate, of course. So, and the main driver of globalization is, of course, the media. Okay, so this is the main driver of globalization. People are able to connect with each other. People are able to send and receive information because of the available media. And we know what media is. In fact, Rule 2014 described it as a means of conveying something, such as a channel of communication. So media. So anything that we use to channel as a channel of communication, and we know what the channel is as an instrument, as an avenue, as the road to communicate. And that's what you call a what that's what you call a media, um, medium. So technically speaking, a person's voice is a medium. However, when we say media, when we use the term media, most of the times we are referring it to technologies of mass communication. Before uh, we only have two types of mass communication. We have printed mass communication or printed media, and then we also have broadcast media. Under printed media, we had newspapers. We have newspapers, okay, magazines, newsletters. These are all types of printed media. That those are all types of printed media under mass communication. And we also have broadcast media, which includes radio and then television. But now we have our digital media, specifically social media. We have Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. These are all types of social media platforms, and they are great drivers. They are very powerful drivers of globalization now. Okay, so they are very powerful drivers of globalization. Okay, so we are able to connect, and just like what is happening now, although it's not at all globalization, because we are in the same country, we are in the same province, we are in the same area, but as to concept, we are able to connect with each other despite the fact that we are in different areas. We are separate from each other, we are remote, we are, and but still we're able to connect, we're able to communicate, we're able to converse, and then we are able to hold classes. And that's an example, this is a real example of how powerful technology has become on communicate, on connecting people. And that has made globalization even reinforced, okay, or even and that has cultivated more globalization. And that's what happened, that is what is happening now. So connecting with people on the other side of the world is now much easier than it was a few years ago. Before, if I don't know if you still know Skype. Do you know Skype? Are you familiar with Skype? Are you familiar with Skype?
Yes po.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Before we before we had this Google Meet, this video call on Messenger, this Google Duo or whatever video conferencing platforms, we had Skype before. Skype is very popular before, but even before that, of course, we had our cell phones. We had payphones. Do you know payphones? And then you also have, of course, before that we had our letters, and I mean before that we had our telegram and then letters. Okay, but in case of letters and telegrams, it takes several days, in fact a month, especially if it's overseas, for you to receive a particular message. But now we can receive information, or we can receive message in real time, okay, through chatting and their texting. So before chatting, there was texting, right? But now believe that in reality, students or the youth no longer do texting, right? Am I right? You no longer do texting. You only do chatting on Messenger. That is because um, you can send message in Messenger without having mobile load. So you prefer now, and many people prefer now chatting or messenger chat than um, messenger chat than texting. So that's another, and we know messenger is more functional. It has more functions than texting, because in texting you only have, you can only send a message, a text. But on Messenger, you can send pictures, videos, audios, links, attachments, or whatever, even files. Okay, so it's more functional. So people are using and are now into Messenger than texting. And aside from the fact that is also free, that it can be used for free. And it also enables people to have video calls, okay? Especially nowadays that we are restricted from doing mass gatherings. So satellites, fiber optic cables, and internet make it effortless to share information with those in different time zones and locations. And we know that. Okay. So the internet, satellites. Okay, satellites are usually used by broadcast media such as television and then radio, especially television. If if may laban si Pacquiao, usually live via satellite, right? Or pag merong mga important events happening in foreign countries, and then we have to telecast it, and then television networks are using satellites, and most of us, and then all of us actually, all of us here now are using the internet. Some are using fiber optic cables, and but those are still internets. Okay, internet. And then global communication is directly affected by process of globalization and helps to increase business opportunities, remove cultural barriers, and develop a global village. We'll be discussing more of this later. And then both globalization and global communication have changed the environmental, cultural, political, and economic elements of the world. Of course. Okay. So here are some of the benefits of globalization. The first one is increased business opportunities. So in terms of increased business opportunities, many companies nowadays hire employees that are located in other countries. And that's what happens in the Philippines now. If you are familiar with BPO, with business process outsourcing, otherwise known as call centers, they are actually a product of globalization. Why? Because the most of the times, or usually, the companies that they serve are based foreign, in foreign countries, are based overseas. And these overseas companies, they connect with call centers here in the Philippines, okay, to serve as their customer service representatives. And and these Filipinos here in the Philippines, they receive calls from customers or clients of these companies overseas. So that's why we call them, and that's what we call call centers. In layman's term, we call them call centers. Okay, but okay, most of the times they are serving companies overseas. And you would ask, why do they come here in the Philippines? They hire Filipinos. Well, simply because the cost is less here in the Philippines. The minimum wage rate is lower. The cost for establishing call centers or BPOs, I mean customer service centers, is less compared to their countries. That's example in the United States, in Australia, in other Western countries, the cost here is less. That's why they prefer to have to outsource their customer service centers here in the Philippines. Also in India and in other Southeast Asian countries. And also, in addition, that Filipinos are really uh, good in communication. So we can speak in English, and then we have good grasp of the English language. That's why generally they love or they like to be here in the Philippines. Technology also makes it easier to connect with suppliers and customers all over the world and to streamline those relationships through improved ordering, shipment tracking, and so on. And with Lazada and Shopee now, we can order already overseas. Okay, the shops, some shops are, or several, or many shops. I mean, many shops are overseas, are based overseas, but still we can uh, order from them. That is because of these third party platforms, Lazada and Shopee. Now, do you understand how these Lazada and Shopee works? No, I know that you know this. I hope that you know this. Okay, but Lazada and Shopee do not have stores at all, right? Lazada and Shopee do not have stores. They are third party. They are third party entities. Okay, they are third party in the customer and then shop or seller relationship. So what they do is that they connect users, they connect customers to the sellers, and they connect sellers to the customers. That's what they do. They do not have stores. Okay, so if what they do is that they collect this, they become a repository of sellers, a group of sellers. They give opportunity, they give avenue to sellers to connect with wider audience, with bigger audience, and with that sellers will have more opportunity or will have a greater chance of selling. Okay, so that's what happens with Lazada and Shopee. There are shops based overseas. Okay, so that's what happens with Lazada and Shopee. You do not actually buy from Lazada and then Shopee. Hindi ka bumibili sa Lazada and then sa Shopee. Bumibili ka pa rin doon sa seller, sa shop. You only buy through Lazada and Shopee. Okay, hindi ka bumibili sa Lazada sa Shopee. Hindi ka bumibili sa Lazada and sa Shopee. You buy, depende doon sa seller, doon sa shopper, doon sa shop, doon sa seller, but that is through Lazada and Shopee. Yun yung nangyayari doon. So many businesses are able to take advantage of opportunities in different countries or cities, improving the economic outlook on a global level. So yun. So of course, because of globalization, because of the internet specifically, Filipinos can have already overseas businesses. Before, it's very hard. You have to export and then import in order to connect overseas in terms of business. But now we can connect already with shops overseas, with businesses overseas because of the presence of many platforms, usually online platforms. The next one is fewer cultural barriers. Globalization has made it possible, for example, for someone in Japan to understand how someone in the US goes about their day. And that's and with television and movies, cultural barriers are becoming less prevalent. And not just television and movies, of course, with the internet and then with social media. Before, it's very hard. It's really hard for us to watch foreign series, foreign television series. We are only able to watch before foreign television series because of when it is being dubbed, when they are being dubbed by television networks. So when they are dubbed by television networks, that's the only time that we are able to watch um, foreign movies or foreign television series, right? But now we can already watch television series, movies, foreign television series, and then foreign movies on demand whenever we want, wherever we want, because we have now many platforms where we can watch and we can stream these movies and then television series such as Netflix. We also have iFlix, VU, IQIYI, and many other applications that use. We have Korean dramas are very prominent in the Philippines now. Okay, Korean dramas are very prominent now, and then we also have American series. Okay, and then we also have Netflix, the movies, and then there are also series in Netflix. So it's there are no more barriers. We can already watch them whenever we want and then wherever we want. As long as we are connected to the internet, we can watch them. Okay, so it's much easier. And then you can also download them. Okay, and it will be available, and when you download them, they will already be available even without the internet. So that's why it's easier to be connected, and because of that also it's easier to transfer culture. It's easier now for culture to influence. Okay, such as for example Korean culture. The Korean culture has influenced many Filipinos now. In fact, if you search on Lazada and then Shopee, there are so many Korean based items. Korean shoes, Korean dress, Korean shorts, Korean bags, Korean cups, Korean caps, Korean uh, ba- Korean bags, Korean shoes, Korean socks, or whatever. There are so many Korean based items, right? And I know that some of you here are also want to try to do some gyup, also want to try soju, the very most popular drink in South Korea. Because these are all part of cultural influences because of the fact that there are no longer cultural barriers. There are fewer cultural barriers. Other than that, we also have many youth today, and not only youth, there are also adults who love Korean artists, Korean bands, Korean groups, such as ano pa yung mga Korean groups? We have ano ba yung mga Korean groups?
EXO,
EXO, yeah.
BTS.
BTS. Ano meaning ng BTS? Anong meaning ng BTS? Bakit
Bangtan,
BTS? Okay.
Bangtan Dance.
Okay. We also have Blackpink sa mga babae. BTS babae ba yung Blackpink na? Babae yan ah. Okay. Babae ata yun. Yung BTS naman, lalaki yon. And then yung, ano pa, EXO, lalaki din yun, di ba? And they've also conquered the world, right? Not just the Philippines, they have conquered the world. They are very popular around the globe. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, they were nominated in Grammy Awards, the most prestigious awards in the music industry in the world. They were nominated also, and they have topped Billboard. Billboard, they are now one of the Billboard top artists, right? And not and their influence is not just on the music industry. They have influenced the social and the cultural, socially and culturally. But there are so many Filipino youth now who want to look like Koreans, no? Kinukulay nila yung buhok nila, pinapasingkit ang mata, di ba? So those are all types of those are all influences of Korean culture. And again, that happens because of the fewer cultural barriers. And the cultural barriers became fewer because of the internet connection. We get connected to them already. We can already know them. Okay. So there's no need to go there just to know the culture. You can already you can already be aware about their culture without going to their country. Okay? This all happens because of the internet. Because we are now connected, it's easier to be connected around with countries or with people in countries around the globe. So being able to communicate effectively and frequently with colleagues or friends across the planet helps people understand each other's cultures a little better. That's what happens now. And then also because of the fewer cultural barriers, okay, because of the fewer cultural barriers and people are now connected to each other, then there is already what we call a global village. A village of the globe. Village and then globe. So that means we are we are as we are now working or living as one community. So the phrase global village was coined by theorist Marshall McLuhan. Affected both by globalization and global communication, the global village is created when distance and isolation no longer matter because people are connected by technology. So that's it. So we are now living as a one community, and that happens because we are already connected by technology, specifically because of the internet. Okay, so we can now connect, okay, with each other from across the planet. Okay? Almost all of the countries now have internet, and we can connect with them. Before, it's really hard to communicate with our loved ones who are residing, who are based in overseas, but now it's much easier. We can connect with them anytime and then anywhere, as long as we are connected to the internet. Before, napakamahal tumawag. Right? It's really expensive to call someone overseas. Okay, that's why the communication is not so frequent because it's not that cheap. But now, as long as you are connected to the internet, you have at least connection, a good internet connection, and you can connect with them anytime and then anywhere already. So it's much easier and it's much cheaper compared before. Okay. Widespread telephone internet access have been life-changing for many people across the world, especially those in developing countries. Many are now enrolling in universities across the world without having to leave their desk chair. So we now have the concept of online education or online distance education. Actually, what we are having now is online distance education. But in terms of globalization and in the context of global village, this means that we can already enroll in universities overseas that are based overseas without going there physically. We just have to connect ourselves on the internet, and we just have to enroll online, and then everything will be available online. Actually, it happens already before, even without the internet. We have what we call the open universities, but they are using modules, printed modules, and they're going to send you the modules, the books, through couriers. Okay, but now we don't have to do that because we can already be connected through the internet. Okay, so now it's much easier to study this, to engage yourself in an online or distance education system because of the internet. It's much easier. Okay, so that's it. Again, virtual assistant jobs are becoming commonplace. Okay, that's what I'm telling you. The call centers, the BPOs, virtual assistant, where employees from developing countries work with companies in North America or Europe, providing administrative support and other business services that can easily be conducted over the phone or via the internet. That's what happens now. Okay, so yung BPO, yung call center, that's an example of a virtual assistant job. Okay, bakit virtual assistant? Because yeah, virtual, no, you are having an assistant through virtual communication. You're going to call them, okay, and then you connect with them. Then you're going to help you, and they're going to assist you with your problems or with your dilemma regarding the services of a particular company. Okay, so North American and European companies, they they go here in the Philippines, they come here in the Philippines, and then they outsource their call centers, their customer service centers, because it's much cheaper here in the Philippines. So, and the Philippines are also good in communicating, uh, and we're also good have good grasp of English language. That's why they come here in the Philippines and then outsource their call center or customer service centers, and that's what happens now. And all of those happen because of the internet, because of the modernization brought by technology. Okay, so that's it. Do you have any more questions? Do you have any more questions? If none, let's call it. Yes. Do you have questions?
No, sir. Wala po.
Okay. So,
None, sir.
okay, let's call it a day. Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning.